Hopefully you all seen my Floyd Mayweather career review. Here's what I was going to get on to next. Muhammad Ali. So his record was 56 wins, 37 of the 56 wins coming by way of knockout. 5 defeats, one of the defeats by KO. Now, BoxRec is an excellent website because it really breaks down the careers quite well. As you see here, you can see his pro boxing career and his amateur boxing career, the Wikipedia page. And I don't have an account, but you can even get more details of each individual fight in terms of how it was stopped, what round it was stopped, or if there was cuts. There's his pro boxing. His fight was 61, 548 rounds, which was a hell of a lot. 60 point and 2/3 of the KO percentage. Height 6'3", reach 78, so long reach. So I know you saw there his last fight ever, but I'm not going to go fight by fight, but I'm going to go to when he kind of hit the scene or so. Okay, Sonny Banks. I believe Sonny Banks was Muhammad Ali's first professional knockdown in his career. It wasn't a heavy knockdown at all. Muhammad wasn't hurt, but that was turned out to be a tough fight for Muhammad. But he did get him out of there, I think, not too long after. Kind of like a similar fight, which we'll get on to later, but that was his first knockdown, I believe. And he had trouble. Now, where am I? Doug Jones. Doug Jones was a tough fight as well. He thought he was going to get Doug Jones out of there, but it turned out to go the distance. And Doug Jones, I believe it was Angelo Dundee said that he was telling Muhammad Ali to keep his guard up and fight when he was fighting Doug Jones, but he said Muhammad Ali done worse when he was fighting with his guard up. So when he told Muhammad Ali to keep his hands down, he done better. But he thought he was going to get Doug Jones, and he remember him saying in an interview that Doug Jones was the toughest guy he fought, and this was prior to the Liston fight. He said that Liston wouldn't even be as much of a challenge as Doug Jones was. So Muhammad Ali came to the UK, went and fought Henry Cooper in Wembley Stadium directly after Doug Jones, and he was not the best received from the UK audience because myself being from the UK fans don't necessarily like the American style of promotion. They like a gentleman kind of people's champion like a Frank Bruno. So Muhammad Ali came over to fight Henry Cooper, and given it the talk, he was going to stop him easily and all that, giving it his bravado, and it turned out also to be a tough fight. So like the Sonny Banks fight, Muhammad Ali got dropped in the third round, was it, or the fourth round? The fourth round with a heavy left hook, and this time he was properly hurt. But Angelo Dundee, using his trickery, managed to get Ali some time, or Cassius Clay as he was then, but managed to buy him some time. There was smelling salts involved, and he's able to get a spare pair of gloves on and kind of buy him about a minute, or, an extra 30 seconds or a minute of time, and was able to get him revived again. And he went out and stopped him in the next round. And people thought that Cassius Clay was no good, and that once he fought Sonny Liston he was going to get beat up and it was going to end his career, and they thought, he's just clowning about, he's just a big mouth, he can't box, he can't fight, he's not really confident in himself, he's talking, but he's not been able to back it up. So what did he do? He went and fought Sonny Liston. He was 22 years old at this time. He went and fought Sonny Liston. I think he may have broke some records in terms of heavyweight title matchups because there was a lot of publicity in this fight. He fought Sonny Liston, and it was, he was doing fairly well outboxing Sonny Liston. Sonny Liston was having trouble with the movement and cutting off the ring. Ali was, showing great hand speed, great jabs, straight punches, and he was outboxing Sonny Liston fairly comfortably. Yes, he was having spots of trouble. Even I think in one of the opening rounds, he got caught with some good shots, and then it was maybe 2 or 3 rounds of the penultimate ending. He had the infamous stinging in his eyes, so there was some kind of problem, and he was stinging in his eyes, and he couldn't really see too well, so his eyesight eventually returned, and then Sonny Liston claimed he had a shoulder injury, therefore he called retirement on the still. So they had the rematch about a year later. I think there was one of them got injured, maybe Cassius or Muhammad, as he would change his name. He had some kind of a problem with sparring. He hurt his eye, or broke his rib or something. Or I think it was Muhammad himself who was then called, was actually hurt, but KO'd him in the first round. I'm going to call farce on it. I'm going to say that Liston took a dive. He was rolling down the ring. A guy with a solid chin took Muhammad Ali's shots. The first fight wasn't really going close to going down. Then it just drops. Muhammad Ali's hit people harder than that with worse chins than Liston. So I don't buy it. But then he goes on to fight Floyd Patterson. Stops Floyd Patterson. He goes and fights Chuvalo after. Chuvalo's a tough opponent for Ali, but Ali gets through him. The Cooper fight. He hurt Cooper worse this time. Cooper was bleeding very, very badly. And I think it went a similar rounds. I can't find the rounds here because I'm not logged in, but it went a similar amount of rounds to the first fight, but he outboxed Cooper easier, and the cut was actually much worse because the first fight was cuts too. Brian London, that was a very straightforward fight. Went a few rounds. It was always in his highlights, knockouts, because of the tremendous hand speed that he showed. And Karl Merlenberger fought him in Frankfurt. Here's another highlight, and probably my favourite. Not sure if that's my favourite performance. It's one of them. It's maybe Muhammad Ali's best performance, but it's not his best fight. So, yes, it's his best performance in terms of he looks spectacular, but he's had better, more entertaining, competitive fights, as we'll see as we go down. So, Cleveland Williams, I know that was third round. He really put a beating on Cleveland Williams, boxed round him. Great jabs to the body, more of a variety. Jab to the body, come left hook to the head, dropping him several times, finishing him. Foot speed and hand speed was looking great. Possibly the fight that was the introduction to the shuffle. Ernie Terrell, the build-up was good. I liked the whole name calling thing where he was calling Muhammad Ali Clay, and Muhammad was he was pretending to be angry, as he would admit later on that he was using it as a good way to build his new public image. And it was quite a competitive fight. Ernie Terrell actually, I think, has a swollen eye after, so he had got quite a bad beating. And then he had a Sora Foley, he beat Zora Foley pretty well. Knocked him out. I think he knocked him out clean. And then the refusion of the draft took place, and you see there's 3.5 years of a gap. And you know what I'll say about the first sort of section of his career, while he looked fantastic, the resume is not amazing. You do have a good name on Liston and Patterson. Ernie Terrell was a fairly tough challenge at the time, but it was really the second part of the career that was the real legacy definer. So Jerry Corey stopped him on the referee's technical decision. That was pretty good. He was able to keep the distance well. And then Oscar Bonavena stopped him, I believe, in the final round. Good fight. Wasn't having it necessarily his own way either. But it definitely showed that he had a tremendous talent. Having so long out of the ring and being able to jump back in with not the worst guys in the world either. I know Jerry Quarry, the two of them have bet losses, but they're not knockover jobs either. Jerry Quarry, there's quite a few losses and quite a few draws, but Jerry Quarry at the same time, it wasn't the worst kind of competitor you could have been in with, especially having such long out of the ring. And Oscar Bonavena, I would say the same for him, because these were brave guys too. They wouldn't mess around when it came to fighting. And then he fought the guy who had beat, was it one of these guys, or Jimmy Ellis, who is another Louisville, Kentucky heavyweight, for his old titles. And if you see there's only 2 titles. Both these titles were founded in the 60s. They started. Muhammad Ali was one of the first to have both of these titles, believe it or not. Like the Ernie Terrell fight was for the WBA. That was one of probably the first contested heavyweight matchups for that belt. So to have these two, you're undisputed, but you weren't really called undisputed back then. You were just the champion, and that was it. Because you never hear, guys talking about Muhammad Ali being undisputed. They talk about Mike Tyson being undisputed. Mike Tyson had the IBF as well, and they called him the undisputed. And I'm not sure, I think Ring Magazine might have been a belt too. But anyway, fights Joe Frazier. This went on to be an absolutely excellent sort of event, never mind a fight. Just this main event, not even the undercard. I couldn't even tell you who was on the undercard. But it turned out to be an event in boxing history, and you'll find that with a few of Muhammad Ali's fights as we get on to that. But, Frazier's undefeated. Ali was about 31-0 at the time. And, Muhammad Ali was kind of a bit annoyed because Frazier had been in the spotlight and he had been recognised as the champion, and Muhammad Ali said, was thinking to himself, I'm still the champion because I never actually lost my belts inside the ring. And who is this Joe Frazier guy thinking that he can beat me? And Frazier actually was one of the ones who helped Muhammad Ali to get back into the ring. I'm not sure of the details of that, but there's something about Frazier giving Muhammad Ali a lift, and I don't know, Muhammad Ali was talking trash to him and trying to talk him into a fight. But here we go. This was probably the biggest fight in history at the time. It was called the fight of the century. It was at New York City, Madison Square Garden, and this was doing Louis Schmeling kind of numbers, I would say, or maybe even better again. New York City was everyone was focused on. They got all your Joe Lewis's and everything in attendance, all your celebrities, and it was a good fight. It was an entertaining fight, competitive. You could see that Ali wasn't just as sharp as he was in his previous sort of years back in the 60s. His jab wasn't just as fast, but he was putting up a decent fight for having such a long spout of inactivity. Frazier hurt him in the 11th, and then again in the 15th, dropping him. And it was acknowledged that it was knockdown, so it was quite a worse knockdown than the two previous in his career. But that heavy hook, he felt it, he took it, and he really had to put his chin in the air in order to get knocked down by it. And he took the shot, he went down, and he got back up again. He probably saw the shot coming because his reflexes and that weren't just as good because of the inactivity of previous years, prime years. And it was a classic fight. There is a Muhammad Ali fights I do enjoy more than this one. I know a lot of people, it's really their favourite Ali fight. I will say it when I come to it, what one mine was. But I definitely enjoy this fight, and I have saw it several times. And Muhammad did really drop in that 15th round, but good punch resistance. Ellis. I thought Muhammad, I watched this one about a year ago, so I can kind of remember it. He was getting hit a bit with Ellis's jabs, and Angelo Dundee took Ellis's corner because Angelo Dundee trained Ellis, but he trained Ali too, and he managed Ellis. I'm not sure who managed Ali because, the guy didn't really, if he had a promoter, he didn't know the promoter, even though he's the promoter, because Muhammad Ali was such a big draw himself. It's kind of like you don't really recognise Floyd Mayweather's management or that because he's such a big draw. It's the same thing here. So Ali fought Ellis with a bit of trouble, but got him out of here, and Angelo was in the other corner, but Ali was eating some of Ellis's jabs. It wasn't looking spectacular yet. And there you go, Buster Mathis. Many will know Buster Mathis Jr. from the 90s. His father. Frazier fought Mathis too. I've probably seen this fight, but I forget it. With all due respect. And Jurgen Blind. This was actually on Boxing Day, ironically. I don't know if I've saw that fight, but if you see there, he really hasn't with the best of records, and Ali stopped him. I don't think I've actually seen that fight. Mac Foster. Okay, this was in Asia somewhere. So I'm going to go through some of the just briefly. Chevalier, he fought again, beaten decision in Vancouver. He fought Jerry Quarry again and stopped him. Alvin Blue Lewis, I saw the fight. It was fairly straightforward. I liked the build up too because Muhammad Ali went to Dublin, and it was interesting to see him with the Irish culture. Obviously being sort of Irish myself, I enjoyed that. Patterson, second time round, he had less trouble with Patterson than first time round because Patterson is really one of the most skillful guys that Ali fought. So Patterson did raise some trouble. And if you want to know, Patterson trained with Costamoto, who trained Mike Tyson, learned his craft off. And that's a good insight maybe as to how Mike Tyson would do. Now Mike Tyson was much better at that style actually than Floyd Patterson was. But that was just somewhat of an insight as to what could have troubled Muhammad in the very hypothetical matchup of him and Tyson. Right, Bugner's a tough opponent, and he's another one that pretty decent contender. Bugner got some criticism. Bugner was alright. Norton. Muhammad Ali was, he actually wanted to help Ken Norton out. And Ken Norton never really got the publicity, but even though he was chief sparring partner for guys like Joe Frazier, and I'm not sure, he might have fought Foreman after Ali, but Norton was really Ali's toughest opponent. Ali could never really figure Norton out, and he really had trouble with Norton. And, Norton was really putting it on Ali. And Ali was never quite... he broke his jaw in that fight. He got his jaw broke, Ali. He's never really figured out the Norton puzzle. He could never... Norton had such an interesting crab-like defense and jab. It's easy to, understand why Ali had trouble, but just, Foreman was able to knock Norton out, and that's why Ali became frustrated with people saying that Foreman was better than Ali was, because he was saying like he could beat Foreman, and clearly he did beat Foreman, but Norton was a tough opponent, and Norton was the real best contender. Norton beat Ali. Ali beat him in the rematch. Still not that convincingly. There's another opponent there that I didn't actually know Muhammad fought. Rudy Lubbers. He fought him in... not sure where that is. That like Europe somewhere? Asia? The second Frazier fight. One that obviously people know about it, but it's not really up there because people like the first fight and the third fight. Ali beat Frazier in 12-round decision, and he was looking quite good there. He was looking fast again. He was moving well. He was using his jab well. He was in good shape, and this was his sort of precursor to a very, very big event, which you'll see about next. So Ali definitely won that fight. It was actually less competitive because it wasn't standing and trading. He was boxing a bit more, and he was dancing a bit more. And so he got that win, and that was at Madison Square Garden too. The North American Boxing Federation title. The big one. So this was in Central Africa and the Congo. 14-0 George Foreman. He had ran through Frazier in 2 rounds. Ran through Norton in about 3 rounds. 2 tough guys. 2 guys who hadn't really been, I don't think, stopped by anyone else around that time. Well, I know they hadn't. Frazier had only been, stopped. So 2 tough competitors. Here's this guy Foreman that beats both of them. Ali loses to them. So here comes Foreman. Strong guy, dangerous puncher. Real dangerous opponent, really. In the prime of his career. But Ali's saying, I can beat him. And I'll beat him in Africa. I'll show all the world that I can win. And he was, a fairly, large underdog. He's a good bit older than George at the time. It was really his best years were definitely in the past. He had some good performances against Frazier, and he had beaten some guys like Norton and Buckner and Floyd Patterson prior, but nobody was really giving Ali much of a shot, and Ali did stop him, knocked him out. And he made Foreman punching himself out. So he was smart enough, and he had the ring IQ to know that there is a way to beat him. He was able to think laterally and find a way to beat Foreman, and he did. And that's probably the best win. This is also most people's favourite fight. It's not mine. It's probably in the top 10. It would be in the top 10, in fact. But it's probably the best name he has, because Foreman was just a wrecking ball. Foreman was more revered than Liston was, because Foreman was better than Liston, for my opinion, and punched harder, etc. Better jab. Maybe he had a better job actually. Liston had a good job too. In this fight, some people know this fight as the fight which made Sylvester Stallone write Rocky Balboa. So Hammond fought, Puck this guy, Chuck Wepner. Kind of I don't know if he, like a French contender, journeyman. Bled a lot, cut a lot. But he took Muhammad Ali a good few rounds. Well, he took him, I think, nearly the distance. Dropped him with a body shot. Really didn't have the best of techniques. Really a slugger kind of guy. Never really looked like it. He was great stamina, hand speed, or anything exceptional. Nearly like not a club fighter, but a sort of French contender. And, Ali had it tough, but he stopped him in the last round. But this was kind of what sparked the Rocky Balboa Apollo Creed thing. So Ron Lyon, a guy who drops George Foreman, what goes to war, but ultimately he gets stopped. Muhammad Ali, his real sort of good performance. It's loud. It stops him himself. Frazier rematch. Probably my favourite Muhammad Ali performance. My favourite fight. They kind of consider it one and two best, but it was so slim, the victory. But it's probably one of the best heavyweight fights of any era. And Muhammad Ali really wasn't the same after. I watched this Koopman fight, wasn't that impressed. Jimmy Young actually went to beat George Foreman. He gave Ali trouble, and it was really starting to show that Ali was not the same. Sparked Dunn out. Dunn's actually from the UK. Beat him convincingly. Southpaw too. Norton fight. Most, including myself, thought he lost. Interesting event. He was actually introduced to, I think, the show Ray Leonard when Ray Leonard was an amateur. And Norton essentially beat him. Shavers once again nearly knocked him out. Hurt him badly. He really shouldn't have been in against Shavers. Maybe earlier on in the career. Yeah. lost to somebody 6-0-1 and Neon Spinks, albeit Olympic gold medalist. Became 3-time heavyweight champion. And these two fights against guys who had gone, Larry Holmes became really the dominant force in the 80s. Trevor Berbick held the WBC for a while. And then they both actually fought Mike Tyson, these two. But Trevor Berbick wouldn't have done so well against a prime Ali or even close. So, top 3 heavyweight of all time. Better than Marciano, better than Tyson, just because of the stack of names. Really fought everyone there was to fight. Should have fought Shavers earlier in his career, right enough. But really, went on too long as well. That's all I can say, really. But excellent Hall of Fame career and one of the best, fighters of all time. It's definitely one of the best heavyweights, if not Joe Louis. I do think he's better than guys like undefeated guys like Rocky Marciano and Floyd Mayweather Jr. just because of his tendency to fight anyone. Anyways, that's it.